Hey everybody, hope you get your dance on, get some energy. Super excited about this session. So we're going to get started in just a sec. Awesome. Well, if you're here to learn all about the ABCs of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, you are in the right place. Welcome to everyone joining live on LinkedIn, folks joining live on our YouTube channel, as well as in the Zoom through Eventbrite. Really excited to have you all here. Before I introduce our session and we get going, a little bit of quick housekeeping. If captions are beneficial to you through watching this show, head over into our Zoom. That's the easiest way to get that to have that accessible. So let me throw that here in all the different comments. There you go. So head over there if that's helpful. Oh, wow, that was a lot of captions and comments. Well, spammed everyone, sorry. But excited to have y'all here. I'm Nikki, I run Hustle Hunters. We love engaging in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging topics. And I'm going to bring in my co-presenter, Katherine, to the screen. Hi, Katherine. And today we're going to have an interactive session, so feel free to jump in any of the comment streams or chats, whether it's in Zoom live or if you're watching us later. Ask questions out loud to yourself or feel free to get in touch with us. We'll give you plenty of ways to do that. And as we keep going here, Katherine, are there any other housekeeping things we want to note as we're getting started?
Let's have some fun. I miss seeing folks in the audience, so I'm going to pretend that you're all engaged. That'll help me stay focused and present. And I encourage you to take notes, take some lessons, and watch this again, and actually practice what we teach. That's the best way to make the best use of this time. As a multitasker, this is one of those you want to take notes.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, this event came about through my own journey as a founder and learner. As a lifelong learner, I wanted to start a business, recognizing that I was a white woman, and kept finding myself really excited about building this diverse team and doing it right. And I had all these like really altruistic ambitions, and then recognized that I kept finding myself stuck in, where do I start? Can I say that? Who am I to say this? Like, I had a lot of those types of questions. And then got hooked up with Katherine, who was able to really get me from that place of interest to really making some actionable steps and having that confidence to build my own practice, learning about myself, engaging with others in my team, and getting to a place where we run a pretty kick-ass team and have all sorts of lived experiences represented. And I've gotten to learn a ton on that journey. So I'll let Katherine introduce herself to this space, but we're really excited that y'all are here.
Hi, everyone. Yes, Nikki, I love that you slang and you curse a little bit. So we're not perfect here at Hustle Hunters. That's number one. So yes, I'm Katherine Castro, she, her pronouns. I'm the new associate director at Hustle Hunters. I'm also the founder of DEIB community group. Please check us out. We're on LinkedIn. I'm also a mother of mixed children, Chamorro, Latinx, Black, and just vibrant. I'm really excited to be here with you today. When I met Nikki, what I realized is I have a gift and she has a gift. I've learned there's a lot of learning in the slowness, and Nikki likes to move fast. Don't get me wrong, I like to move fast. But when we got together, we're like, oh, we have something here. So I'm really excited for today. During that learning and our engagement and our relationship, and when I joined Hustle Hunters full time, we noticed some recurring themes, right? So how do we pick our topics? So it's not the Katherine show. I say that a lot. I don't just go pick out a topic. I listen to the team. I listen to the media. And so these themes emerged from our team and from all of you. And they are three: vulnerability, definitions and naming, and cross-cultural communication. Today, we're going to be covering vulnerability.
Yeah, and this is really session 1, and we're ready to dive in here. So thanks, Andrew. Love that comment. Love working with y'all as well. And to get started into vulnerability, let's dig into our agenda and why this is so important to us. So today, as Katherine mentioned, one of my strengths is really like making decisions and getting shit done. So today we're going to start with the hard facts of why we need to do that, right? I'm an athlete. Like, we're going to kind of dig into that space. Then we're going to dig into maybe the more natural piece when we think about vulnerability, right? The softness, the squishiness, like the human side of things. Then we're going to do this in practice. So really showing up today, and we're going to start flexing that muscle. Mentioned lifelong athlete, like, yes, we're talking about practice. That, Jackson, you might appreciate that in here. And then from Katherine, kind of learning that slow down piece of let's be intentional about our closing and see where we're going to get to, whether that's in tomorrow's session, whether you're on this recording live, or if you're figuring out what that next step of your journey looks like. So we're going to get started with some hard facts. So there's been a lot of research on all sorts of concepts around vulnerability. I think Brene Brown often comes to mind for many who's been studying this space for a long time. We also wanted to bring in some experts with other lived experiences so we can elevate the folks that we've been learning from. So to get started, we're going to use this quote from Dr. Jody Lowinger just to set the framing of our conversation. So by creating a more open, communicative work environment through our own vulnerability, leaders are then able to discover problems faster. People are more likely to bring issues forward and admit to mistakes if they're less afraid of doing so. Vulnerability stimulates collaboration, learning, and growth rather than fear, cover up, and blame. So as this quote mentions, this isn't our first session by accident, right? This is a very intentional piece of things. And another quote to continue here is just being vulnerable as a leader involves a change in mindset that enables you to see through the eyes of the people you lead. By doing so, you invite them to become the drivers in the conversation. The result is that people become more involved and interested. Another leader I follow a lot here is Adam Grant, the author of Think Again, really looking at as leaders. If we're going to be innovators, that means we're wrong a lot. And engaging our team in that process and showing our vulnerability can be really important and bringing them along with that piece of it. So vulnerability really creates engagement. At the end of the day, these are the numbers that are going to drive us through here. And in organizations with low employee engagement scores, notice 18% lower productivity, 16% lower profitability, 37% lower job growth, and 65% lower share price over time. Which are pretty incredible numbers for a soft, squishy thing that I think many of us think belongs at home, sometimes more than in our workplaces. So how are we going to get these results both as humans in our larger cultures and then kind of in the broader ecosystem as a whole? Well, now that we know why it's so important, I'm going to kick this over to Katherine so we can talk about what is that soft, squishy center.
Thank you so much, Nikki. I want to do a call in too on the hard facts. Look, the hard facts, we pulled that for you. But the reality is we just do the work. And then later on, we pull those hard facts. So something that I appreciate from Nikki, and I want to encourage more leaders to do so is, when you know it's the right thing, do it. The data exists. The business case has gotten it's getting a little dusty. We all know we just have work to do. So today is a good day to get started. The soft center. So what the heck does that actually mean? We use some words like squishy. Let's get really specific here. The soft center is within you. Yes, I'm asking you to open up. I'm asking you to figure out, how can my softness, my empathy help my business thrive? If you're thinking to yourself, Katherine, I need to make money. My soft center is I need to keep my employees. That soft center, that stickiness, that's what's going to help us get there. I promise. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So here's a real example. We've changed the name, so of course, protect people. So here at Hustle Hunters, we read a lot of resumes, right? And we read between the lines. So here's a success story. Take Freddie, a mother who's ready to get back to work. She has career gaps for caregiving, and Hustle Hunters built trust with her, and she opens up. The exchange in vulnerability leads to getting to the truth about the gaps on her resume, which helps us prepare the client too. She became a phenomenal hire with her client. This is just one story, but we only have a short amount of time. One of many stories.
Yeah. And then looking at another example, kind of with one of the awesome partners that we work with, kind of thinking about what is the life event calendar. And George is the white manager, and his new employee that he hired through us, seemed to not be very engaged in his work, was taking a lot of time away, and it seemed to have like a new major life event every couple of weeks that became a priority. This employee, Arnold, is a Black dad and serves as the financial rock for most of his extended family. So before making any decisions or bringing this up both bluntly to Arnold, Pip, or firing, together with our client, George, we went on a research journey, and George was able to dig into what were his expectations as a white man that has a fair amount of financial and family privilege of how often should a life event occur. So that's like a death in the family, needing to coordinate a funeral, that's a major illness from a child, et cetera, et cetera. And what is reasonable? Who determines what's reasonable? And if they were committed to supporting their employees, what was the real challenge here? Was it these life events? Was it lack of understanding? So they were able to implement better communication and continue working together.
So wait a minute, Nikki, you're saying cross-cultural communication and vulnerability helped in this situation?
Yeah, this is not going to be an end-all be-all show up for one event and then be pro. Sorry, everyone. I hope we don't see a major drop-off of attendees all of a sudden. Spoiler alert, this work takes a lot of time and it is a never-ending journey. So y'all are here, you're doing the work, you're on the journey, and you will be indefinitely, which is really exciting. And we're trying to build some community of doing that together. So yeah, on Thursday, we're going to talk more about cross-cultural communication, session 3 for folks watching later. But in this experience, we got to set the framework and realize what were we coming to that conversation without knowing? What was the research we needed to do on our own? So that then when we came to the conversation, when this manager was able to come to the conversation with his employee, there wasn't a bunch of unknown experiences in the room, right? He wasn't coming from a place of judgment. He was coming from a place of openness, curiosity, and understanding, which made a huge difference. Mm-hmm. It's a different type of vulnerability. Definitely a lot I've learned. I thought vulnerability was, I'll just tell a really embarrassing story about me and then you'll tell really embarrassing stories about you.
That's also it sometimes.
But I've learned through this journey that vulnerability can show up in a lot of different ways. And for me, it was that vulnerability here of George to say, I might not know enough to approach this conversation yet. That vulnerability ended up being really critical and key. Anyone,
how are we doing out there?
Folks in the chat, has anyone approached vulnerability like me, where you kind of found a hardship story, hoping that then it would get folks to engage? I think on the parenting front, that's one I do a lot. That first example was part of it, was we built trust just by also being parents. And that was able to kind of give that mom, that caregiver, the enthusiasm to realize it's okay if her kid interrupts during the conversation. Mine does all the time. Everyone on my team knows Izzy very well, who's my 5-year-old. So it can come in different ways, but I'm kind of curious to hear from y'all what that looks like. So if you're in the Zoom or on LinkedIn, I'd love to hear from y'all. What's a vulnerability experience you've had, or what do you think of when you think of vulnerability there? Thanks, everybody. We'll kind of address those in a second. Katherine, why don't you take us through the slide?
Sure. All right, so this is going to expose me a little bit. Here's some vulnerability, what kind of music I like. And if you don't know, it's okay. You can look it up on your own. This is my mama time by myself in the car. So I walk it like I talk it. All right, and so when I was consulting Nikki, let me rewind time a little bit. Before I joined Hustle Hunters, I was actually consulting Nikki. So the story she shared with you didn't just happen. She knew exactly what to do. She knew exactly what to say. And then it was like done in that conversation. It was longer. I'm sorry to say, that was the slowness. She would call me, Katherine, we need to unpack this. And I'm like, cool, tell me what it is. And so we realized this conversation with Nikki and I, this needs to be a learning experience for our team. Oh, well, I got brought on for our team and now for our clients. So I want to share with you that's vulnerability, is that we didn't know exactly what to do until you showed us your vulnerability and then we identified a solution. So then we came up with something called DEI weeklies. Fun fact, we just call it DEI weeklies because we meet weekly and then it just stuck. The DEI weekly was influenced by real-time challenges. So the stories we share with you, they were success stories, but they started off as challenges. We pay attention to hot topics. If your employees are engaging in the Slack channels, and maybe they look a little distracted, you might be thinking like, we don't need to talk about these hot topics. We need to get to work. Well, those hot topics actually influence our work. Now, I'll get to that in a moment. We unpack what our cultural differences are. And believe me, at Hustle Hunters, we have some cultural differences. In the DEI Weekly, we understand the why. Why are we doing something? Why are we asking for gender pronouns? Why is Katherine hair appointment that darn important? Why is it important for Nikki to have certain tasks she does in the, may I say, Nikki, in the water? In the bathtub. Yes, our CEO works in the bathtub. There's a reason. If you want to know more, you have to book us for those. You have to book us for those really vulnerable stories. We created more courage to weave in D&I in all of our work, and we have metrics that actually reflect that our team started implementing the learnings from D&I Weekly into recruiting, into conversation, into their emails, into a social media post. We had stronger cross-functional collaboration. Well, when you get vulnerable in D&I Weekly, I mean, what are you scared of when you're working together on a dock? At that point, you create more trust. The increase in volunteer support offer, there became more increases in asking for help and offering support. So yes, we measured the work, and I always want to note there's always residual results from the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah. And thank y'all for sharing, like, what does vulnerability mean to you too? So as we're thinking, like Katherine mentioned earlier, sometimes the data is going to be there. Sometimes you just need to get started and lean in and trust that this process, trust that this is what folks are saying is important to them. Let's start going there. And then we found all sorts of residual pieces that we didn't even know about. So for some of y'all are saying, like, you know, being humility and empathy, Andrew, is really important when you think about vulnerability and being a strong leader. I totally agree on that one. And then, yeah, Jackson, you're saying, like, for you, vulnerability often shows up while trying to balance your own feelings of imposter syndrome with the optimism and enthusiasm that seems necessary to motivate a team. Totally. It's a balancing act for sure. And I love that you're wrestling with this duality of who am I as a leader, but also I'm a person too. And kind of bringing that into that space and looking at how do I motivate my team, right? Because at the end of the day, that's, as leaders, what we're trying to do is help empower them. Get from point A to point B together, the sum of our parts. And then, yeah, I love Katherine just mentioning that, yeah, sometimes just seeing a kid pop up in Zoom, it's hard to track that. Like, what is the data that comes up from that? So another example of, you know, a very data-driven metric on our team was we were able to host a company-wide retreat earlier this year. And for many of you out there who are thinking, how does hybrid work? How are we a remote team that meets occasionally in person? What does that look like? When you put all of the time, energy, and resources to bring everyone into one space, every minute is so precious. We were very intentional about every second that we were spending together, but there were also a lot of unknowns. We'd never seen each other's body language. We'd never been in the same room together. So we weren't entirely sure how quickly we were going to build that trust, how quickly we were going to be able to jump right in. Do we need a lot of icebreakers, or we can get right into the work? You know, the go in me was like, okay, we need to work immediately. But then when I lean on what, like, Jackson and Andrew, you're saying, like, at the same time, there also needs to be that, like, acknowledgement that we're all here and maybe it's awkward, and what does that look like? And our team clicked from the first second of being around each other. And I 100% know that that is because we've done these DEI weeklies. We've unpacked things, gotten really deep and engaging together. And that has let us see each other in good moments and bad moments, pick each other up, and just see the humanity behind everyone. Not necessarily assuming best intentions, but at least understanding where someone came from to get to the place that they got to. So when we talk about time is money, that came through 100% in the work that we've been doing. So I wanted to share some of those statistics.
Thank you, Nikki.
All right. So I feel like we've done, oh, sorry, Katherine, jump in.
No, no worries. I love that we have notes because that helps with people. Yeah, vulnerability. I have notes, y'all. I have notes because Nikki and I are talkers if you haven't picked that up by now. So I'm excited to get into the next part. So I have a little secret to share with you that's not so much of a secret anymore. I wasn't always so empathetic. Yeah, me, I wasn't. I was nice, but I don't know if I was practicing empathy. I got my master's in coaching. I spent a lot of hours learning how to be empathetic. So thank you for joining us for 1 hour just to get a taste of what this could look like. I appreciate all of you.
Yeah, and then a quick note to add in here as we're kind of dipping into practice. I really think of building these skills as a muscle, right? You can't just show up to the gym and win a weightlifting competition.
You're gonna hurt yourself.
You're gonna definitely hurt yourself, right? So we need to build that strength. And something that I noticed and something I see, especially in white folks, is that I got to choose when I started on this journey in my life. It wasn't a daily reality of me, right? I've had experience. I've been blessed to be part of communities where I've been the only of something, which doesn't always happen as a cishet white woman. But whether that is, I've been the only white person in many spaces. You know, I've been the only cishet person in spaces and had that privilege. But I got to choose to step into those, right? Because I was born as like at least the dominant power majority in the country I live in looks decently like me. So I chose when to practice, whereas I find that folks who have a different lived experience where they've like experienced that oppression, whether racial, gender, etc., every day, that muscle's pretty strong. And it wasn't by choice. It was just kind of forced to be that. So that's a lens I want to kind of invite the white folks who are on this call to remind themselves that you're starting where you're starting. And every day it's going to get a little better. And it might feel kind of weird at first. I remember in college when I started weightlifting, I weightlifted with I'd never lifted weights before, but I didn't want to tell anyone that. And I started with like the strongest person on the team. And I literally couldn't walk up and down stairs for days because I was so sore because I felt like I needed to get to this level. That's not how this work is. A lot of the work starts on ourselves, and this practice right now hopefully gets you your daily dose of strength training.
I will say though, Nikki has hurt herself. That story is also when you book us one-on-one. And thank you, Nikki, for saying that you're a white woman. That was one of the challenges I gave Nikki, I want to say a year ago. I think it was a year ago. And Nikki was like, what? I'm like, yeah. Let us know, I'm Black and Latina, that you know you're a white woman. Because if you don't know, you can create more harm. So that's one of the courageous moments we've had, a metric that has shown over and over again the relationship Nikki has built with me, with others around us. So if you are white on this call, I would love to see that. Where are we at, folks? Are you here with us? I hope so. I can't see the chat, so we'll see what Nikki says to me.
That whiteness and getting that practice of kind of identifying yourself and calling yourself into the room, it opens up so many doors I found for me just in my life in general, and the topics that I can see folks like breathe a little bit, recognizing that I recognize the baggage that I'm bringing into a space goes really far. So I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Thank you. Proud of you. I can say I'm proud of my boss too. It works both ways. All right, let's get into it.
Yeah.
All right, so this is a sample. It's a taste, all right? So we don't rush through DEI weekly. This is actually a shocker for me as a DEIB practitioner. I think we started with 30-minute sessions. You know what the team's first critique was? They wanted more time. More time.
More and more and more. This was like the highlight of everyone's.
And then we had a push. I had to ask Nikki for 1 hour and 20 minutes. Nikki was like, Katherine, that's a lot of money. She didn't say it like that, but it's true. It's a lot of resources, a lot of money. And so the data to show the proof that this works was very critical to hold that time. Yeah. That also meant I had to hold the team accountable. I had to hold them. If you want this time, we need to show that this works. So we can get into the logistics of how this rolls. Let's move on to the next part.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
Forwards. Hold on.
Okay, thank you.
Wrong direction.
All right. So when we do DEI weekly, Again, this is a mock, this is a taste. We don't just jump in. We establish community guidelines together as a team. Those are unique to you. But for today's purposes, there's some chat guidelines. To avoid bringing down a person, people, or sparking debate that we can't hold in this session, I personally ask for you to hold the chat comments about how you feel about the content, posts, videos that we share to a pause. What we do encourage you to do is process with more appropriate spaces. I'll be more specific. I don't know who's in the audience, but I'm kind of vibing off of Nikki's vibe here. White folks, white friends, I do have white friends, in addition to Nikki. You may want to process with white friends or your therapist. Both, go for a walk. So that's what I mean by processing, to be more specific. There's a trigger warning with today's video, violence. There could be more triggers that I can't identify because I don't know I can't see or know or hear you. So this is a moment where if you want to just take a pause, it's about 1 minute and 32 seconds. And our lovely support Ariel will be playing the video. I'm sorry, one moment. The video is from the Oscars 2022. If you haven't heard of it, that's not a worry. That's why we're watching the video, so we can level set. It's about Will Smith and Chris Rock, the slap heard around the world.
Let me make sure I can get this. Oh, I see it. Okay. I'm going to drop out. Catherine's going to drop out. Okay, just kidding. I'm on it. For those of you who want, or here we go. Let's get this going. Wouldn't be a live webinar if there wasn't at least one audiovisual hiccup.
You know who's got the hardest job tonight? Javier Bardem and his wife are both nominated. Now, if she loses, he can't win. He is praying that Will Smith wins. Like, please, Lord. Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? That was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Oh, Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me.
Take my name out your fucking mouth.
Wow, dude.
Yeah.
It was a G.I. Jane joke.
Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth.
I'm going to, okay? Okay. That was a greatest night in the history of television. Okay. Okay.
All right, Katherine, I'm going to bring you back in here.
Hello, everyone.
Wow.
We don't need that again.
No, we don't need it twice. So I'm going to give everyone a moment to take in what you experienced with us. Can you please put in the chat if you have seen or heard about this experience? What are we seeing, Nikki?
I don't have any responses yet.
No responses. So when I have no responses, but I still have an audience, that tells me a couple of things. You're rushing to get your cup of coffee or refill of water. You're with your kid. That's my life. That's my life. You're still processing what just happened. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, and some folks saw it live. Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
Yep. Next slide.
All right, and we're back.
All right. So when this event happened, it impacted people differently in my Katherine Castro's life. The challenge with virtual work is I can't see Nikki's face. I can't see if folks are gathering and talking. In my life, I'm processing it on my own in a very different way. And so when I stepped into my metaphorical hustle hunter's office, the Slack channel was quite lively. My social media feed was very lively. People are now processing and expressing. Now you could be thinking, Katherine, that's just like Hollywood gossip. Well, if you unpack it with some people, unpack it, when you have that conversation and you read social media, that's actually not all that came out of that experience. So for that DEI weekly, we pivoted into this is the work we're going to do. Now, at this time, this was not our first DEI weekly, and we had to keep building upon the work. Now, this work starts off more simple because I want you to warm you up, and then we get harder. We get much harder. And so this day, the stage was shared. I was not facilitating and leading the conversation. Our team was. And so this is how we did it. We had the event. I gave them warning, just like I did with all of you. We had homework. Watch the video if you haven't seen it. And then when we stepped in, everyone had an agenda prior. Why have an agenda prior? It helps different abilities and how different ways of people thinking. So someone that's overwhelmed, a mom of I don't know how many or how many cats you have. Then you have folks that have maybe ADHD. It helps them keep on track and follow along, or anxiety. There's so many layers of why we provide an agenda. So for this one, it was all of that, and I want my team to be prepared. And so when we stepped into this space, I asked everybody to take a perspective, not bring in your personal perspective, but take a perspective. Whether it's yours or not is not the point here. So here are some of the perspectives that emerged from social media, the Slack. So number one, some people laughed. It was funny. Some people were saying protect Black women. We're under harm, we're under attack. Again, violence within the Black community and more. And again, it's not the Katherine show. You know what I wish? I wish I had that global lens. I'm constantly developing it. My friend in London said, we're over it. Now, she doesn't represent all of London, but the point is, I was wondering, what else am I missing? So then we had an option called Learner's Choice. Learner Choice means you can go on the internet, research, and find something else that maybe we're not noticing that we need to bring to light to have a conversation. Throughout this experience, everyone did their individual learning. We came back together and we held the perspective of that topic. So if I had number one, I brought in, my topic is funny, and this is what I found people were saying. We had screenshots. It was a very lively session. I would say one of my favorites. I learned a lot.
I learned a lot. I had funny myself and got to learn all about where humor fits in and when humor is okay and when humor is not okay, and that intersected with what other folks were learning. And again, it wasn't my perspective. I was just kind of taking on that lens and speaking up as if I were the concept of funny.
Yeah, and I'll be really vulnerable. My initial reaction was laughing. And then as I processed, I realized I didn't know what else to do in that moment. I was shocked. And so we learned about what happens when people laugh. Is it funny or are they nervous? go on to the next slide.
Yeah.
So every D&I session, every session that I will have with you and with Nikki, we have goals set. Those are the hard facts. I need to measure this work. I want to make sure that you're also growing, right? Unless you want to keep us along forever. I want you to grow on your own. I want you to be able to leverage us as a springboard for your next journey in learning. So we had set goals, and here's the impact. Vulnerability. That session was extremely lively because people put themselves in the front to be vulnerable. We were grounded in facts. Facts. Because of this event, other events were in the shadows. That's a fact. It's a fact that at Hustle Hunters, we have a very American centered mindset. That's a fact. How it's going to impact our work? Many facts came out of this. We've gained perspective. There were topics in there that I didn't even know, which proved the point. There was a Latinx actress that didn't get the amount of recognition. I knew it was a fact because I had no idea until I learned it in the D&I session. We strengthened an empathy with each other and for ourselves. So people brought in like, oh, I laughed too. And there was some shame in the space that day. And we were able to pick each other up. Do you know how critical it is to pick each other up in that conversation? And then when one of our clients didn't sign an offer, directly related. We pick each other up because we do it often.
Yeah, and then another impact that I was able to see from this was that, I mean, as Katherine mentioned, Slack is blowing up. Like all of our organizations, this was the discussion on anywhere on social media. Most people we chat with, like the Slack heard around the world, right? We were discussing this in different places. The piece that I think I hadn't thought through was, what is that? How does the violence against women, specifically in the Black community, play into here? What is the impact of us discussing this and processing in a space that kind of has a bunch of different cultures and lived experiences represent? How are people feeling when they just see kind of an unmoderated, like verbal process happen in a chat? So it's already happening, but likely there are folks on our teams that were not okay with that were experiencing like pretty active microaggressions as that conversation was happening. Because, you know, anytime people like to pick a side, right? There's a little bit that comes from there. So yeah, reading up on the background, Kathy, I think is a really important piece of that too. And discussing it with friends, right? We're all having these conversations. So that was the piece for me that was the biggest needle mover, was we were doing harm in our workplace by not intentionally talking about this discussion. So we were actively doing harm, potentially doing harm in our workplace, unless we addressed it with a different lens and a different intentionality that was grounded in vulnerability.
Nikki,
I didn't run a business to create harm, and I was doing it, right? That's a huge thing to sit with.
Mm-hmm. Nikki, I want to reply to some of the chat I saw. Thank you for looking up and reading up on the background. I love that. That's a first step in vulnerability, is looking something up that you don't know much about. The next part is like you discuss it a bit with friends. That's super vulnerable. Y'all, not all my friends know what I actually do. They just know they're scared to show up to my house on Halloween and get checked on their costume. But they really don't know the day-to-day of what I do. It is vulnerable discussing this with friends because things might be said that maybe you don't agree with. At work, we can't hide from those moments. We have to really have those tough conversations because they directly relate to other conversations we have, like receiving feedback about our work and how do we do better as a team, right? The other piece is when you look something up, I don't know about you, but when I look something up, I get kind of lost in my learning. I get like in a fun way, right? But my path remains with my bias. So my learning stays here, right? And I'm only navigating the internet how I am navigating it. Now, what happened is, and if you can't see me with your eyes, I'm using my hands to create a tunnel. What happens is when we're learning as a team, everyone else brought in their tunnels, and then it widened. Our lens of research widened. So that's why I encourage you to practice researching with diversity in your team. Let's move on to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
All right, so I think my professional opinion is, and Dee and I work, if you hit your goals, fantastic. My favorite goals are where they have residual goals, residual outcomes from those goals. Those are my favorite. They make Nikki the most happiest, right? Like bigger bang for your buck. So some of our residual results that continue to drive our work today, we learned about centering versus targeting. Katherine, I don't want to look just for like Black people. Isn't that like targeting? Is that racism? If you would love to know those answers, we'll have those conversations with you one-on-one. So we are centering, not targeting. Best practices in how we engage with social media or what message we want to share. Now, if you're a CEO on this call, you know what happens if your employees don't know best practices on social media and how it impacts your business, right? And if you don't, we will share more information with you on that as well. Language matters in all expressions, written, publicly, privately, even silently in our minds, because it will come out in our work. Knowing the difference between responsive and reactive and how that can impact our team or each other. Next slide. So if you don't know Nikki by now, I will let you know something about Nikki. Nikki will get in the mushy center with me. Like she will get in the learning, but at the end of the day, she's like, okay, I feel it. I need to go take a nap and drink some water. But now what do we do? So I'll let Nikki take away.
Yeah, now we're going to hone that muscle. So my call to action here for all of you, we're going to spend some time on this. I think so often in our days, it's easy to get really busy and not actually carve out time to think. So we're going to do that. If you're watching in a replay, please sit with us, think with us, slow down. Again, this is what I've learned in this DEI work is sometimes you need to sit and slow and stew, because a lot of this work starts with me before it can make it out to my team, to our clients, to the candidates that we serve. So I want everyone to think about what's a topic you want to learn more about. If you're comfortable, get it in the chat. That could be an event. That can be a holiday. Yesterday, Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year, is one that comes to my mind right now. And then if you're feeling super brave, how do you plan to learn about it?
I had a recent one, Nikki.
Yeah.
I had a recent one where I didn't know I wanted to learn more about it. So one of my friends, Katherine Rivera, she's blind-ish. I never knew the ish part. I just thought it was being like a kind of logo. I didn't know it was a part of her disability. And I learned there's more than, I think, 4 different types of blindness. You know how I learned, everyone? I was hosting her in another call because she's fabulous. Check out her TEDx talk. And I said something about like, oh, can your reader pick this up? And she goes, Katherine, I don't use a reader. I'm like, and my brain just, it was like overload. And so that's one example of like, oh, now I want to learn more about her experience and how I can be a better friend. And so you may know something about a topic, like, oh, I know about the LGBTQ plus community. I got that down. Like, oh, do you? Because I've been doing this for over 10 years and I still don't have any of it down. I'm Black, Latina, I'm an advocate, and people are constantly changing. So your learning needs to also constantly evolve. Anything in the chat?
Not right now. So
Okay.
yeah, if you feel super, I think step 1 here is like, what's a topic? What's an event? What's something you're interested in learning more about? Another really good one is Black Women's Equal Pay Day. That was last week. If you don't know about that, I highly recommend digging into it. All sorts of great resources on Google there. And then what do we plan to learn about it? I think setting a learning plan can be great. Often doesn't go to plan, but it's nice to be a little bit intentional. What am I actually going to be thinking about learning here? I met with my brother-in-law yesterday and he talked about, he has a friend who's a chef, and he said, I kind of just want to like intentionally learn how to chop things better and do prep better. And if I spent a week doing that, my whole life, I'd be great at prep. But if we just keep doing it the same way we've always done it, we're not necessarily planning out that we're going to be intentional about that learning. And then how do we plan to learn about that? What are some resources we want to tap into? Again, I recommend that, especially if we're talking about someone's lived experience, if we're interested more in folks experiencing homelessness, or what is that trans experience like? Recommend doing our research first. Books, the internet, where people have chosen to already share those stories is a great place to start.
They have to book us. I know you like to. We love to talk about this. I mean, we're slowing down our pace of talk so you can keep up with the replay, but really, like, this energizes us. And I just want to share, like, Nikki, we got to book time with folks. Like,
yeah. So this type
Just
of coaching is what we love to do, is to be really customized and really get into that nitty gritty and hold us accountable. Because what I learned in my own journey is that, again, having like the passion, the intention was great, but I wouldn't start doing something that I'd never been trained in or didn't have any resources in. And that's where bringing in someone like Katherine that has that specific DEIB training and is eats, sleeps, breathing at all times, this work.
That's true.
So important to have that in. So yeah, thanks, Andrew, for saying that. Culture Committee Initiative is trying to be more inclusive of all religious holidays and making sure they're standard as part of our limited PTO communication and visible to the team. Amazing. Andrew, we've got an event coming up that I want you to be part of so bad. We're doing a cohort digging into this. But yeah, that's a great one. How are we going to make this messaging inclusive? We learned actually in DEIB Weekly last week that Diwali has other terms that can be used because the regions, depending on the region in India that folks stem from, which was a great learning from a lived experience with someone on our team. And it was presented in humor and got us all to a really excited place where we wanted to learn more. And I think holidays are a really good one. I'm glad you called that in here. So today I want everyone, think of a topic you want to learn a little bit more about. We're just gonna be quiet for the next 30 seconds while everyone thinks through what's a lens maybe you're not thinking through on this topic, and think through one action point that you're gonna go about. So I'm gonna throw on some music here for about 30 seconds. Awesome. Thanks to everyone for participating in this with me. That's something, taking time to specifically think about a thing and then at times doing a share back where we can learn from each other is a really impactful part of the practice that we've kind of actually integrated in almost all of our team meetings and are seeing some benefit with that with our clients too, where times we'll just ask a question and I'll kind of sit with it. And just carving out that time and intentionality lets us do the slowing so then we can move really quickly because we've actually thought about the framing early on. So that's, if you're looking to implement one strong DEIB topic that doesn't always have to feel like it came from a DEIB book, but thinks anything about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, which is basically every sentence we say, every interaction we have, every email we write.
Don't scare folks.
Every contract we write. That's where all of this work comes through. So that's the freebie, is I would set some time to think about this in your meetings and do some share backs. More, let's get deeper. That's where we want to work more directly with y'all.
All right. We've covered the hard facts, the soft center, and we've walked you through a little taste of what we're practicing inside. So what's next?
So in case you're wondering what else we can support you with, here's some examples of things we've done with clients, thinking like maybe thinking a recruiting tool will solve all of our DEIB issues. It's a great time to be in HR tech. Tools we love are like Searchlight is one that we really enjoy, but that still isn't going to solve all of our problems, right? We hear from some folks say like, DEIB is not my job. I have 700 other jobs. Let's dig into that. That's a really great one to unpack because at the end of the day, if we're talking about people, whether that's hiring or retention, it's our jobs.
See, Nikki loves y'all so much. She was like, no, I want to give them the answer now. Like, nope, we got to go through the soft center. We got to do it together.
Yeah, the other one we hear a lot is we don't need ERGs or we're too small to have ERGs. That's a really great concept to unpack together. And I'll just leave it at that. Other examples we hear, well, we don't need an interview structure. We've interviewed well in the past. It's kind of weird to ask for gender pronouns. This DEIB stuff is hard. We'll do this next quarter. It's not a priority right now. It seems we all want it, but it's too big. Oh, well, when that person gets hired, right? This can go on and on. These are just real conversations that we have with folks all the time. These are some of our favorite things to start unpacking and getting from that like intention to actually making decisions and putting it into place in our organizations. So if you're curious, contact us so we can meet with you and kind of move through your unique needs. And ways you can do that are through our website at hustlehunters.com. Gets you lots of ways to interact with us. So there you go. And a few other events that we have coming up. So rest of the week, tomorrow, for those who are joining us live, we're going to dig into definitions and naming. What is this? What is DEIB? How can we all get on the same page? Thursday, very heralded cross-cultural communication. This has been a presentation, I think, Katherine, that you've honed over years of experience. So definitely one that I don't want to miss. And then internally at Hustle Hunters, we've got a couple really great events that we'd love to have you all come for. First, we've shifted to a focused work week. It's kind of like a 4-day work week. For us, it's a little bit different. Learn from our operations manager, Ariel. Shout out to the whole Hustle Hunters team on here as we've been living our best lives, doing really hard work and also making sure we have time for ourselves. She's going to be really transparent and vulnerable and tell about our story. So that's one we don't want to miss. And then Andrea mentioned for you to dig in a little deeper. Let's talk about holidays. What are we doing for our communications policy? What does our PTO policy look like? We're going to dig into the nitty gritty of that on this cohort. I think there's 7 spots left. Starts October 6th and goes through the first week in December. This is going to be 5 weeks where we do a 90-minute session and really learn a new thing together, similar to what we've done today. It's going to be with the same folks every week so we can learn from each other too. And really digging into what's on your set of tasks for the day that we can do and apply that DEIB lens to. So what does that lens look like? Where in our work does it apply? Again, everywhere. And then how do we actually do it? And then for me, the piece I needed was that practice, and that practice with a coach. So looking at Katherine here in this situation, she's going to be our coach, right? She's going to review those comms. So Andrew, you bring that policy as that draft. We're going to get into it and apply the lenses that maybe you're missing. We're going to workshop the language so that then you have that confidence that you can roll that out to the team, knowing that, you know, we've reduced harm in all the ways possible to get that out there. So if you're thinking about holidays, you're thinking about what does our hiring process look like? Whatever challenges operationally and as people leaders we have, what is our policy around referrals, right? Digging into all those really hard questions. That's what we're going to do with a practical application. Because so often we find that we all want to do DEIB work, but we don't know what it is. And it doesn't always have metrics. And figuring out how do we build metrics around that when we have 60 other jobs on our plates that also have metrics, is easy to have that fall down. So we want to get you into a place where it's really easy to be defensible on your teams. Not, hey, everyone stop using this word, but understanding why, so that you can actually have that defensible conversation internally and start that learning journey. So really excited for everyone to join today. Thank you so much for taking your time out to do that. We'd love to take some questions with the rest of our time today, but we really hope y'all will think about joining our cohort. All the events at Hustle Hunters, you can learn more about them at hustlehunters.com/events, or reach out to Katherine and I would be happy to share more information specifically about what these ones look like. So we've got some comments here, so jump in with questions if any of you have them. So yeah, how do we express why this is important to us? Katherine, do you want to field a little bit of that?
Can you unpack that for me a little bit? So is that the specific question? How do I express this is important to me? Who are you expressing it to?
Yeah, so Andrew, if you want to give a little more context on that question, it's such a good question. Like, how do we talk about, I think like just that DEIB is important to us.
Okay.
How do we share that in our organizations? I think I would.
Let me share some various ways so that way I can give you a bit of a toolkit. I'm glad we're almost at time though, because you have to contact us for more. All right, so how do you express yourself? I will start with how you don't express yourself. You go to Target, I love Target, but you roll in and it's Pride Month and you buy everything. I'm talking about the hat and the shirt and the pants and the shoes. and then that's done. You have now fully expressed yourself with all the swag of Target you can find. Don't do that. What I would love for you to do is, yes, use some imagery to express yourself. It's a very simple way to kind of show the world like who you support, what you're about. But you need to take it a different step. Expressing yourself by, hey, y'all, I read this book this week. You know, we have small talk in our meetings like, hey, what'd you do this weekend? That's a common question, right? What book did you read? What book you read tells me a little bit about who you are. This background is not by accident. I like to show people what I'm constantly learning about. Another way to express yourself, there you go. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Another way to express yourself is, you know what I said, the expression, walk it like you talk it? What do you do in your personal life about this work? Do you volunteer? Do you mentor people? How does that population look like? These are various ways to express yourself. Follow different folks. I am on LinkedIn. Thank you for the ads. I've been checking as I've been on here with you. Who are you following on LinkedIn to learn from? Now, if you're thinking like, I don't know what to say yet, you ask me, how do you express yourself? You can amplify me and the hundreds of other D&I practitioners doing this work. When we get amplified, people get more consulting gigs, they get a job. You just don't know what you're doing for us by amplifying our platform and our voice. Andrew, I would love to hear more about what you've done.
Here. I can.
Yeah.
Apparently my camera's unplugged, so we're gonna have to deal with this for the rest. But he said, how do we share when we pick up an initiative or something that's important to highlighting as an organization? Do we make sure that we're expressing the importance in a genuine way that speaks to the why?
You're okay. So you're getting a buy-in. You're trying to get buy-in. All right. So there's a couple of things. It depends. So there's events that have happened and it triggered Hustle Hunters where I didn't have time because I'm one person to go gather all the data, present the business case, and then do the right thing. Sometimes it's a little muddled. I did the right thing, had a conversation with Nikki, brought in the data. So it came in as a package, but it didn't come as neatly and kept as I wanted it to be. For you, it sounds like, I'm assuming you're probably walking the walk. Showcasing, there is data to prove it. Now, there might be people that don't even know that data exists. So for example, if you look at vulnerability, there's a lot of data that supports vulnerability. If you're talking about, I want to hang out with my coworker, there's data that supports you actually need to be human to do your best work and connect with people. And if you're finding challenges like Katherine, well, I need other data. Well, that's when I need to ask more questions. So this is difficult because I can't have conversation with you. So if you've joined the cohort, I will actually ask probably 3 to 5 questions before I provide any solutions to make sure I meet your needs.
Yeah.
And I really want to hear what you were trying to do at work. I want to hear it so bad. Is there another question, Nikki? I know we're at time.
To close us, I think another piece of that answer that I've learned from you, Katherine, is to kind of like the structure of today's session. You want to get at the hard facts and you also want to get at the squishy center, that marrying those two perspectives. And the squishy center often I'm finding in DEI work is 2 examples. One is the work I'm doing. This is the work I've done on this, and this is the learning I've done personally. 2, this is the potential impact of how it's going to impact my teammates. This is someone I had a colleague that this happened to, like whatever that story is that humanizes the topic, recognizing that probably the team you're just talking with hasn't done the same research that you've done. Mm-hmm. And then 3, here's some data points. Here's some facts of, others in our industry are starting to do this, or whatever that look, whether it's benchmark information, or this is my prediction of the impact it's going to have at work. This is my prediction of the effort it's going to take from everyone internally. So marrying the storytelling piece of it, that if someone is to ask your boss or ask your colleague, why are you doing that? They're ready to go with a story and it's defensible to them. It's easier for them to get buy-in. Well as having the fact of this is the prediction of the impact.
Yes, and I'm excited for the cohort. So now you just sparked an activity I want to do with all of you, is like actually writing a 1-pager and the goals and why you're doing this, so that way it helps you spread the word. But we won't have time for that today, but that's definitely a tactical skill, a very simple skill to learn.
Yeah. So we'll see many of you tomorrow, same time, same place. Thanks, Desiree. It's glad to see you all. Thank you for engaging with us in the chat. It's fun. As the 2 of us could talk all day, but it's more fun to have other perspectives in here. And hope y'all enjoy the rest of your day, and that tomorrow when those DEIB muscles are sore because you're walking down the street and you notice something, you're welcome. And also keep it up because it only gets better from here. Thank you all. Enjoy
Bye,
the rest
everyone.
of your days.